Good morning, everyone. I am Ritvika Bogula from OP Jindal University. I am pursuing my third year of law school right now. And we from Jindal Forum for Space Law are back with another exciting episode of our podcast series. Our first episode was about introduction to space law, and now we're back again with another exciting episode. In this episode, we're going to talk about Chandrayaan 3 launch and the legal aspects surrounded to the launch. In this podcast, we also going to analyze several different factors that are going to affect India at the end of the day. For today's episode, we have two chief guests with us. We have Professor Biswanath Gupta with us. Professor Gupta is faculty of OP Jindal University and completed law school from Tripura University. He has masters from the West Bengal National University of Judicial Sciences, Kolkata, and a PhD from IIT Kharagpur. He has been working in international space law and published numerous research papers, journals. So we kindly and heartfully welcome you to the podcast, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today we also have Professor Aleksandar Milanov with us today. You've all met him in the first episode of our podcast, but let me introduce him again to you guys. He has completed his master's from Sofia University. He has been teaching space law in OP Jindal from over past 5 years. He has worked with government of Bulgaria and publishing several scientific reports also. And we are also excited to have you again on our podcast, Professor. Thank you so much for coming today.
Good morning, Ritvika. Just don't forget to mention that my PhD is from our university, JGU.
I'm so sorry. Let me
Update my profile. All
I'm
right.
so sorry.
Morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning. So, the podcast team is happy and excited to have you both here with us today. And without any delay, let us start talking about the Chandrayaan 3 launch. And my first question is for Professor Gupta today. So, Professor Gupta, would you like to discuss and introduce us to Chandrayaan 3 mission and the legal aspects around the mission, as well as any challenges the mission has encountered in this course of time?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me in this lecture. As you all know, that Chandrayaan 3 was launched recently by Indian Space Research Organization. And the launching of Chandrayaan 3 is a matter of pride for every Indian. Like all the Indian across the nation has celebrated the launching of Chandrayaan 3. And this launching of Chandrayaan 3 is not only the pride is not only limited to only India. This is a pride for everyone across the world. I clearly remember when Chandrayaan 3 was launched, the Prime Minister of India, while addressing the scientists of Indian Space Research Organization, he said this moment is not only a proud moment for India, but also a proud moment for entire global South. Having said so, Chandrayaan 3 is a specific mission which is Indian Space Research Organization is conducting. Chandrayaan 1, 2, 3. This is a third mission when India has landed on Moon. So this particular mission mainly is a hard work of entire ISRO community that has that was seen throughout the mission. Uh, Prior to that, India actually failed in launching the while landing the Chandrayaan 3 on Moon. So this time India was successful. Uh, Being said so, because we all know about the Chandrayaan 3 and the achievements that are associated with the scientific achievements. But what I'm trying to give importance to is the uh, Indian space law and and Indian Space Research Organization. We know that India is signatory of Outer Space Treaty 1967. We not only signed, we also ratified Outer Space Treaty. Uh, since the launching of Sputnik 1, we know that space age started. And from 1957 onwards, India was constantly engaged with international community for the development of the space law. Uh, Recently, the government of India also taken initiative to draft a national space legislation. though the demand for drafting national space legislation is due, it is there in Indian legal community for a long time, but India yet to develop a comprehensive legislation for space law. Even though there is no legislation, but India has definitely enacted few policies like SETCOM policy, remote sensing policy. These are the policy in India which is actually is operating for a long time. So if you check the Constitution of India has two provisions primarily. One is Article 253 and another is Article 73. Article 253 talks about a legislative provision, and Article 73 talks about the uh, Article 73 talks about the uh, executive decision program, where executive order can be passed to fulfill the international obligation. So instead of going through Article 253, which is a legislative mechanism, India has preferred to go by Article 73, which is an executive order. So India passed various important policy documents, such as I said, SETCOM policy, remote sensing policy. So the first SETCOM policy India enacted in 2006, and remote sensing policy was also cleared in 2006. And remote sensing policy was revised in 2011, and the recent remote sensing policy, which is operating in India, it is the 2011 remote sensing policy. So entire Chandrayaan 1 or any other mission that is happening in India, it is governed by this policy. It is also very interesting to note that in 2023, Government of India has first published this comprehensive space policy, uh, 2023 space policy. This space policy was enacted with a vision actually to enhance or encourage the commercial space activities in India. Apart from that, in 2019, Government of India has allowed 100% foreign direct investment in the space sector, private space sector. So these are examples of Indian space law that was enacted by the Government of India as of now. Apart from that, in 2020, during the time of COVID, Prime Minister, while addressing the media, he announced that Government of India has drafted a policy regarding a new policy for remote sensing as well as for SETCOM. Though it was drafted in 2020, it was placed before the cabinet, but it is yet to be implemented. And that policy is very, very important for India because the existing remote sensing policy, which is still in operation in India, is actually outdated. So Government of India has taken initiative to make this SETCOM policy so that Indian private entities can compete with the international market. So that SETCOM policy has all the provision of licensing, regulatory framework. India established also a few organizations for the regulatory organization, such as NSIL, National Space India Limited Company, and then in Space, which is an organization for licensing, monitoring, supervising, which is mentioned in Outer Space Treaty 1967. So these are the regulatory framework, a regulatory institution relating to space activities in India. Apart from that, we know that different Indian laws are also applicable, like contract law, tort law. So if a private entities are coming to India for space launching, so these laws are also applicable here. So Chandrayaan, I see Chandrayaan 3 is a very remarkable achievement, not only from the point of view of technological achievement, but also from the point of view of a private space activities. And I'll quickly tell you why. Because Chandrayaan 3 has showed to the world that India is not only a small launching satellite destination, because we know for a long time, Antrix Corporation in India was launching small satellites, and we have proved ourselves in the satellite launching market. Now, Chandrayaan also has proved that it is not that India is only a launching destination. India also is ready for heavy launching, putting men and also the spaceman mission, and also installing the mega installation, and also putting the mega installations. These are the things which India proved. So now the next step that India is looking for, that in a space privatization, or to allow private space activities to operate in India. Uh, Very recently, Government of India also announced that a robot will be sent to outer space as a part of ISRO's manned space mission. So these are the very interesting development that is happening in India. I'll just end my uh, preliminary note by saying that uh, this is very interesting that when Chandrayaan 3 was launched, just 1 week before, Prime Minister of India, who visited US, and while meeting with President Biden of United States, India has signed the controversial, or one of the highly debated topic in international space law, that is Artemis Accords. I don't know. It is a it is an incident. It is like that happened, or it is a very calculated diplomatic step that just 1 week before the Chandrayaan launching, Prime Minister of India is going to US and signing the Artemis Accord. And within 1 week, India is successfully launching the Chandrayaan and landing the Chandrayaan in the light orbit. Mm, as a researcher, I see there is very close connection to that, because we are listening that moon surface and moon mining, property rights over the moon. These are the issues that international space was talking about. I think this is my preliminary talk about the Indian space law.
Thank you, Professor, for such an insightful discussion about all the aspects around India's space mission and everything. And thank you for also introducing about Artemis Accords, which is really important discussion in our podcast today also. In this background, I would like to ask Professor Milanov about Artemis Accords. Professor, can you elaborate more about the Accords and the goals, the reason behind India joining the Artemis Accords, and how would it even contribute India with respect to its space missions and space targets?
Yes, thank you for the question, Ritvika. I would like to thank my good colleague and great friend Biswanath, Professor Biswanath Gupta, for this introduction, and he gave me basically the ball to continue this discussion right now, and together with to answer your question. Biswanath, I will share my personal view on what was maybe in the minds of the government and of the Prime Minister before this very successful mission on Chandrayaan 3 that occurred. As we know, space activities are very risky effort even today, and very expensive and projects. Just a few days after the success of the mission, we know that around that time, I don't know exactly how many days, but around the Chandrayaan mission, the Russian project was not successful, so they were not able to achieve their goal. And it is quite a failure for the Roscosmos agency. So I see this step of India, I'm analyzing it in two ways. So what are these Artemis Accords? Let's clarify this for the audience here that is listening. These are legally non-binding principles that are even not multilateral. They are a sort of memorandums between the United States and other states. But why it is important to remember these two things, that they are not legally binding, which makes them not very sure. Their implementation is not that well guaranteed. And meaning that, what does it mean that they are not multilateral? It means that the commitments and the promises that are made, the duties, so to speak, of the states are not between each other, but they are separately negotiated with the United States. So I interpret this this move of India, which I have to say for me, it is understandable, but I'm not sure that it is the only strategic move that India can do in international, let's call them space geopolitics. Because right now we shouldn't forget that what we are seeing today is, again, what is happening below is happening above. So the rivalry, not even a competition. Right now we're talking about much polarized international rivalry between United States and their allies, and on one hand, and on the other side is China and Russia, and maybe some of few countries that are going to support them. And it is a very bitter situation and unfortunate situation for international space law development. So what we have seen with the Artemis Accords is an attempt to reinterpret, but in a very dissatisfactory way, or meaning when you cannot violate the Outer Space Treaty per se. Or what you can do as a state is you can find partners to legitimize your violation and basically to choose a completely illogical way to reinterpret Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty, which forbids completely, I will read it, outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. So right now, space became accessible and lucrative. So it is an environment that provides hundreds of trillions and even more, if you want to calculate and evaluate the resources, potential resources in the near, not even a decade, in the near few 4 or 5 years. And there is an attempt of the United States in this regard to try to use those resources without creating, without fulfilling the promise of the Moon Agreement, which none of the states, leading states, ratified besides Australia. And this promise was basically to have a common regime and a specific organization that will deal with outer space resources and celestial bodies in the moon, in this particular regard, as common heritage of mankind, right? Right now, this view of outer space is not, is completely rejected, specifically rejected in the Artemis Accords from the United States, and obviously from the states that are signing and going together with them. So I am very critical about the accords and the states that are supporting this effort of the US government. Okay, let me clarify this. And the reason is because it deteriorates the legality of international space law. Outer Space Treaty is is rest to sleep, so to speak. It is not going to be enforced properly anymore. And keep in mind that the Outer Space Treaty was extremely profound in these few articles that even today guarantees that outer space will be used for the benefit of all mankind, if it is properly implemented, of course. Now, so the controversial article that we're seeing from the Artemis Accords is Article 10. And I encourage the people who are interested in space law and international space law to read all 4 paragraphs of Article 10 of the Artemis Accords, and they will see an attempt. Actually, I think I can quickly pull it here and read it for them. They can see the attempt of the US government, as I've said, to go against Article 2. So the most controversial one, I think, is Article 10, paragraph 2. The signatories of Artemis Accords emphasize that the extraction and utilization of space resources, including any recovery from the surface or subsurface of the Moon, Mars, comets, or asteroids, should be executed in a manner that complies with the Outer Space Treaty. So far, so good. And in support of safe and sustainable space activities. All right, but the second sentence. The signatories affirm that the extraction of space resources does not inherently constitute national appropriation under Article 2, and that contracts and other legal instruments relating to space resources should be consistent with the treaty. So what we're seeing, yes, we confirm Article 2 because they are aware that in practice they are violating the spirit of the article, because the article was quite well written. And now what they can do is try to reinterpret the article and change the spirit of the article. Now, why India is joining this club of, I call them a second coalition of the willing. Why India is joining? Because although India is a leading space power, it cannot match United States efforts to dominate and to use the resources of the moon in the next 2 years in that regard, and also Chinese and Russian efforts, because they are working together right now. So what was left for India, they saw that they are a few years behind, but the moment that these leading powers step permanently, and they make sure that they will step permanently, although this is not also allowed under the Outer Space Treaty, and they will pretend to have different type of scientific work, but make sure that there will be extraction of resources will be the main purpose there. This is clear already from their project and initiative. So what was India supposed to do in this regard? They had to choose a site. They had to pick a site. Now, why it was done before the Chandrayaan, I think as a sort of insurance policy. If something happened with the mission and it was not successful, on one hand, and secondly, now India will also probably will have some leverage when cooperating with the United States, only the United States, to share information about discoveries that could be happening on the dark side of the moon, etc., on the South Pole, and vice versa. And the United States will provide something in return from the resources that they are going to extract from the moon and other celestial bodies. And one more, I would say, confusion is or sand thrown in the face of people, in the eyes of the people, is that when private actors are extracting those resources, this is done. It can be done for the benefit of humanity, of humankind, and this is not actions of states. Well, everybody that is acquainted with the Outer Space Treaty knows from Article 6, it is clear, it is evident that all commercial actors, all private actors should be considered as an extension of the state, right? There are no such things as independent private entities in outer space, and we shouldn't let this practice occur. All right.
Thank you for that insightful information. And do you want to discuss how this will affect India with respect to its commitments outside? Like, do you think it will have any effects from the what do you say, outer agreements that India has signed earlier?
Now, in my view, if the question is to me, right? In my view, Ritvika, it is India has seen that already the competition for outer space resources has started. So they see that they understand that they cannot change this interpretation, this wrong interpretation of Article 2 and the principles, the main principles that are legally binding principles that are in the Outer Space Treaty. They won't be able to change this. So I think I understand the government. Now it is the third option, maybe not between the Chinese and the Russian and the Americans and the states that are working closely with them and supporting the Artemis Accords. These are 29 states. Even Germany recently joined a month ago. So those states, again, the third option here could have been, or maybe it's not too late. Why don't we see that happening? is something that Professor Biswanath said, a leader of the Global South, right? So we don't have any attempt, any commitment legally binding with the international regime to support an initiative that not only allows others to participate, but also provides the principles of redistribution of those resources. How are they going to be used? Do you think that if private actors are capable to extract resources, they are not going to sell them? Of course, they will be created as a lucrative product, right? Or they were going to use them only for their industries. And do we have guarantees that all the information will be shared? No, because the commitment of sharing this information here is to the same level as the Outer Space Treaty. And this, we are seeing this vagueness and this uncertainty that is mentioned in Article 11 from the Outer Space Treaty. So on paper, you're supposed to share everything, but when you consider it viable, and as long as it is considered necessary, right? I'm paraphrasing here.
Yes, Professor. Thank you. Professor Gupta, would you like to share your opinion about the Accords? Like, in your opinions, how do you think this will have an impact in the future?
So, as Professor Alexander said rightly, that this Artemis Accord may have a different kind of repercussion in international space law. Like, uh, I understand that private entities, if they invest in the outer space, if they explore outer space, definitely they are going to do it for their benefit. But I also like to take example from the history of international law. Like the history of international law, we have seen that history of international law is the history of corporations. Like in the international law started with the history of corporations from the Dutch East India Company to the British East India Company. So international law always dealt with the private corporations. So way the international law developed, always private entities were associated with that. Though private entities were never was part of lawmaking power, they never have the lawmaking power, but they were always associated with the international lawmaking. Apart from that, we have seen that how to regulate private entities in international space, how to regulate private entities in international. We have seen that draft principle of state responsibility and other areas of international law also developed actually to regulate private entities if they are involved into any kind of if they interact with international law. So I am not that hope. I am still a little bit hopeful that if private entities invest heavily on moon or any other celestial body, try to extract resources, international law will also react according to that. And one of the two examples I like to quickly give, where private entities' involvement uh, and along with these states has actually paid us in a good way. Like two examples I'll quickly give. One is the International Seabed Authority. Second one is International Telecommunication Union. And the third one also I'm adding, that is the international nuclear law. In these three areas, like mainly seabed or telecommunication, these are also like frequency band and other things. These are also common heritage of mankind. And we have seen that the involvement of the private entities are also huge in these areas. And international law has regulated those involvement according to the requirement. With these, I think I end. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much once again, Professor Milanov and Professor Gupta, for coming here and sharing your insightful knowledge and information about our Chandrayaan 3 mission and the legal aspects around it, and most important controversial topic, Artemis Accords. Let's hope everything goes fine with respect to the Accords, and let's hope anything the government is doing is for the benefit of the state. But at the end of the day, we don't know what might happen. Let's see. And thank you once again for coming and giving us like really good analysis about Artemis Accords. And I really hope our listeners and viewers have gained so much knowledge about something really important and different with respect to space law. And I again heartfully thank you for encouraging us throughout our journey and supporting us. And with that, we end this podcast. And yeah, is there anything you would both want to talk about?
Before we end, it is good to be optimist, and at the same time, we have to be careful. So when I'm thinking about the private sector and what is going to happen in the future, I am again reading the Accords, and I'm seeing Article 8, Paragraph 3, which states verbatim: the commitment to openly share scientific data is not intended to apply to private sector operations unless such operations are being conducted on behalf of a signatory to the Accords. Meaning, if you join the Accords, you receive information and you can receive something. If you do not join them, we are not going to fulfill our obligation under Article 11 of the Outer Space Treaty, and we'll do whatever we want. So to simplify the interpretation of both articles here. Thank you, Ritvika, for this moderation, and thank you also for the audience. We're looking for our next podcast soon.